Well, I talked to Russ earlier this week, and I said, I hope this is like riding a bike. It's been a while since I've been up here, so the nerves do creep in a little bit, believe it or not, but it's been a while. Did everybody have a great Thanksgiving? That's what I like to hear. Like I said, we all had a little time off for some family and friends and food and football, the 4 F's of Thanksgiving, right? And of course, we know that Christmas, right around the corner. I mean, less than a month away now, so time to get out there and do our Christmas shopping. It's time to turn our minds to lights and the festivities and the music and the presents and the holiday cheer. And of course, then January's right around the corner where we can turn our mind to all the credit card bills that are going to come rolling in from Christmas, right? You know, we live in a funny time today. What a different time. It's filled with iPhones and Xboxes and drones and iPads and robots and widescreen high-definition TVs with surround sound. The wonder of technology and all high-ticket items, right? So no wonder the bills start to roll up. You know, my mom is 90 years old, and she likes to tell the story about some 80 years ago when, as a child, at Christmas time, just like any child today, she's excited, she wakes up in the morning, she runs down those steps, and she grabs that stocking off the mantle. And she reaches down in the mantle, and what do you think she pulled out of her stocking? An orange. Some of you guessed that. Very good. She pulls an orange out of her stocking. Now, parents, try to pull that one off today, okay? That's probably not going to fly, right? But she pulls an orange out of her stocking. But the funny thing is, when she tells the story, she's actually excited about this. And the reason why she's excited is because oranges back in that day weren't plentiful as far as being in the household or in the kitchen. Now today, you know, we go to Acme, we go to Giant Eagle, we can buy this huge bag of navel oranges, right? Under $10, and we still complain about the price. But we can take them home and fill up our kitchen with these and just eat them every single day. But for her, this wasn't an everyday item, so she was excited about the orange. The funny part to me is this, not so much the excitement about the orange, but that she can remember something she got for Christmas 80 years ago. Because I'll bet if I went around right now and asked each and every one of you, what did you get for Christmas last year? Probably just a handful of you would really be able to remember, and maybe just 1 or 2 items, you know, if it was something that was really special to you. But it was special because it also reflected the generosity of the giver. What a perfect time of year for this series. You know, we're in the middle of a series right now called The Blessed Life. And we've been talking about the generous heart. I'm going to veer away from the blessed life today, and I'll tell you why. We've all admitted every week that we are so abundantly blessed in this country by God. You know, each of us as individuals, we're so abundantly blessed that we don't even need to talk about that anymore, do we? But what we do need to talk about is the generous life. What are we going to do with this great abundance that God has given us as His children? Now, I have 2 goals for my lesson today. One is, I'd like to help us better understand what it means to have a generous heart. Secondly, I want to change the way that we think about being generous with the things that we've been given. So why this series in the first place? I mean, what's the big deal about it after all? What's the big deal about giving? I mean, what's mine is mine, right? I went out there, I worked for it, I worked hard for it. Why should I have to dole out what I have to anybody else but me? Well, I'd like to pick up right where Jeremy left off with his invitation last week with John chapter 3, verse 16. John 3:16 is probably considered to be the greatest passage ever that demonstrates the love of God. And yet I just want to focus today on the first 9 words of what God had to say. For God so loved the world that He what? That He gave. And I'm glad some of you know the rest of it. I heard you start to continue on out there. But we're just going to stop with those 9 words today. For God so loved the world that he gave. His first act towards our salvation from sin was an act of giving. He could have simply just commanded and demanded and required us to meet some stringent criteria to mend this broken relationship, but he doesn't. He makes the first move, and he gives. He gave when there wasn't anything in it for him whatsoever, except the feeling of satisfaction to know that he gave with expecting nothing else in return. Truthfully, this lesson could end right now today with that passage right there. For God so loved the world that he gave. It's the ultimate in generosity. So I want you to write on your outlines, our level of generosity should be based upon our gratitude for what God has given us. Our level of generosity should be based upon our gratitude for what God has given us. Now, no time to get shy. I'm just going to ask you today, how many of you here, show of hands, feel that they're a pretty generous person? Fairly generous person. Now, we got a pretty good show of hands. I was a little worried. I thought if I didn't get any hands on this, I thought, well, at least I'm preaching to the right crowd, right? On generosity. But, and I'm with you. I feel that way myself. I feel I'm a pretty generous guy. I mean, I give to the church. I help the needy, sometimes the homeless. You see the guys out there with the signs. By the way, I saw one day out there, and it just said, I just want to be honest. I need a beer. I was like, well, I guess if nothing else, at least the guy's being honest about it. But kind of funny. But, we feel like we're pretty generous. We might put in the Salvation Army kettle. We might give to our waitresses and waiters when we go out to eat, give them a fair portion. Every time I think about giving to a waitress or waiter, I think about a series that came out in the late 1990s called Third Rock from the Sun. Anybody familiar with the series? But there was one particular episode, I always laughed at the show, and if you're not familiar with it, it's about some aliens that come down to Earth. They take on human form, they become a family, and they go out to learn about human behavior and report it back to their planet. So there's an episode where John Lithgow, who plays the father, they go into a restaurant and they sit down to eat. And he pulls out a stack of ones like this. I mean, there must be $50 there. And he lays it on the table, and when the waitress comes walking up, he looks at her and he says, "That's your tip." And she's like, "Wow, I haven't even done anything yet, and there's a $50 tip waiting there for me." He says, "However, every time you mess up, I'm taking a few of these and putting them back in my wallet." Well, needless to say, he spends the rest of the dinner time finding things that she does wrong. So if he takes a sip of his water and she doesn't run back out and fill his glass up, he takes money away. And she's like, "Well, why are you taking money away?" "Well, you didn't fill my glass up." So he just has her running all over the place through the rest of this episode. Finally, when it gets to the end of the dinner, she comes back, she's frustrated, she's tired, and there's just a couple bucks left laying on the table. So why do I bring this up? Well, hopefully, this isn't our attitude when it comes to generosity. Because you know what? I can think of a million reasons not to give. Sometimes I see that, homeless person out there, or I see the Salvation kettle, and I think to myself, well, I just gave 50 cents to the one over here. Why should I give another 50 cents over here? We can think of 1,000 reasons not to give. And unfortunately, we do. Well, just like you, I see myself as a fairly generous person. But I like to find out, am I really generous? So I made the mistake of looking up the word generous in the dictionary to find out what it really meant. And we're probably going to put that up here in a second. Generous is an adjective. It describes a person, now notice this, that shows a readiness to give more of something, as money or time, than is strictly necessary or expected. showing kindness to others. It's giving a larger or more plentiful amount than is usual or necessary. Look at some of the synonyms. Liberal, lavish, magnanimous. I don't even know what magnanimous means, but it sounds big, doesn't it? It's giving, it's open-handed, it's free-handed, it's bountiful, it's unselfish, it's ungrudgingly giving. And then I had to look at this and go, am I really generous according to the definition? A heart of generosity means that we give more than what is expected and necessary. So write that down in your outline. A heart of generosity means that we give more than what is expected and necessary. In other words, generosity just became more difficult, didn't it? You can blame Ken for looking up the definition. You can blame Merriam-Webster for that one. So, how do we do this? How can we be more generous? Well, fortunately, God has provided us with some rules on giving and receiving. One of them is found in Luke chapter 6 and verse 38. Did you know that God has 2 yardsticks by which He measures our generosity? 2 yardsticks. The first one I call a good deal. Everybody likes a good deal, right? I mean, we like the BOGOs, the buy one, get ones. Do they do this anymore? Years ago, I remember when you went to the donut shop and they gave you what was called a baker's dozen. I don't even know if they do that anymore. But a baker's dozen, for those of you that don't know, instead of giving you 12 donuts, they gave you 13 donuts. And what did you do with the donut on the way home? You ate it, right? And nobody's the wiser, right? So they gave you more than what was expected. That's the definition of generosity. You got more than what you actually paid for. God gives us what's called a good measure. It says, give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, and will be poured out into your lap. Man, I like the sounds of those blessings, don't you? I mean, think about it. He's not only going to give to you, He's going to give more than what is expected. Because if we just got like for like, we'd be okay with that, right? But you think about it, He's going to give us such a tremendous abundance that it's going to overflow into our laps if we give. And that give has to be a very generous giving, I have to think, and I'll tell you why. I wish that passage would have ended right there, but it doesn't. There's a second yardstick that God uses, and He says, for the measure that you use, it will be measured to you. Like for like, cup for cup. Can you imagine what it would be like if God actually came down physically to this earth and gave us our blessings one by one? I mean, we had to line up. You know, it's like Leach's Meats and Sweets. You take the number and you get in line and you wait for Him to call your number. Can you imagine God sets up His throne here? It's all surrounded by the 24 elders, and it's surrounded by all these angels. And up above it says, God's storehouse of blessings. Get in line. So I get in line and I wait. And, they keep calling the numbers. Finally, there's just one person in front of me. And I'm watching carefully because I want to see what's going to happen here, right? So as we sit there, God opens up a big book. And He looks down through and He finds that person's name. And he's got some notes written down. And he turns 1 page, 2 pages, 3 pages. He's reading, he's looking. Finally, after he's all done, he looks back up and he just kind of clicks like this. And here comes a servant angel out with a dolly with a 55-gallon drum on it. He rolls it out, plops it down, and it makes a thunderous sound throughout the entire room. And the Lord looks at the man and He says, here are your blessings. Go your way and be more generous with others. And the angel takes the lid off of that 55-gallon drum. And when he does, out comes health and wealth and resources and blessing just flowing out completely over the ground. And the man walks away pleased. And now it's my turn. God opens His book up and He looks down, runs His finger down it, finally finds my name, and He just flips 1 page and looks and flips it back. Flips it again just to make sure. Flips it back. I hear him mumble something under his breath. Kind of clicks his fingers. Motions for the angel to come over. The angel comes rolling out a 55-gallon drum, and I'm like, yes! I knew it! I mean, after all, I'm a pretty generous guy, you know. I told you a little bit about my generosity. But he brings out the drum, but when he drops the drum, it doesn't make that thunderous sound like the other one did. In fact, it sounded a little bit hollow. Oh, well, 55-gallon drums, they're all different, so maybe this one just had a different sound. The angel takes off the lid. Nothing comes pouring out. He looks down in there, looks up at me, looks down in the barrel again, looks at God. God hands him a flashlight, okay? Turns it on. He looks down in there. Finally, he looks at God, and God nods to him and hands him a thimble. And the angel reaches down into the bottom of the 55-gallon drum and brings my blessings out and hands them to me and says, go your way and be more generous to others. And I'm like, what? This can't be happening. But then the words come back to me, with the measure that you use in generosity towards others is the same measure that God is going to use with you. Ouch. So, how can I become more generous? I think the key to understanding generosity is really how we view the things that we have. I want to ask you a question. What makes you happy? Quickly on your bulletin, don't think about this, just the first thing that comes to your mind that makes you happy in life, write down. If you're not writing them down, at least think of them in your head. What makes you happy in this life? Okay, all done? I'm just curious. How many of you said their house makes them happy? Nobody? How many said their car makes them happy? Swimming pool? Xbox? That large screen high definition TV with surround sound? Now, how many said money makes you happy? I didn't see one hand in the entire place for those things. If you wrote down something that even remotely relates to any of these, raise your hand. Anybody say anything to do with family, children, kids, grandchildren, church family, spiritual blessings in Christ, maybe moments or memories that you've created or activities that you like to do. Maybe, it's a hot cup of tea sitting by the fire and reading a book. Interesting, isn't it? That when I asked you what made you happy, nobody mentioned things. But you all mentioned relationships. See, that chokes me up a little bit. I think about that. And I had a preacher one time a long time ago tell me that, Ken, people are more important than things. We all know that the word blessed actually means what? Happy, right? I mean, we talked about that. Jeremy did another lesson. The word blessed means happy. But when we think about what makes us happy, it's not the things that we hold on to with a clenched fist, we don't want to let go of, we don't want to help other people with, we don't want to give it away. But we all admitted that these aren't the things that make us happy. We need to view what we have from a different standpoint. There's a law called the law of sowing and reaping. God has established some general rules when it comes to giving. We all know the one, whatsoever a man sows, that he shall also reap. 2 Corinthians 9, 6 through 8 says, now I say this, he who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and he who sows bountifully will reap bountifully. Not too complicated, right? Pretty easy. But then he goes on to show us that there's 5 attributes of a generous giver. The passage goes on to say, each one must do just as he has purposed in his heart, not grudgingly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to make all grace abound to you, always having all sufficiency in everything, that you may have abundance for every good deed. So the first two kind of go together. Do I have an outline up there for that one? Maybe not. Slide 9. Yeah, there it is. 5 rules of generosity. First of all, giving must be from the heart. The first two actually kind of go together. Must come from the heart, and it must have a purpose. In other words, this isn't something that's just done haphazardly, on the spur of the moment type thing. I guess it could be, but for the most part, we need to have a plan. We need to think it out. We need a purpose in our heart what we're going to do. And I'm not just talking about giving here as far as the collection is concerned, but we need to have a purpose, and we have to have a desire to do it. We have to want to do it. 3 and 4 go together. Not to be done grudgingly or out of compulsion. Do you ever know anybody that does something grudgingly? How about at work? Huh? I mean, you think of, people do things grudgingly. It's like, I don't really want to do that. I guess I have to do it because it's my job. I guess I have to give because God commands me to do it. I don't really want to do it. It's grudgery and compulsion. And that kind of giving, quite frankly, is stressful. And I'll tell you right now, if that's the way that you do give into the collection, grudgingly and under compulsion, put your checkbooks away, put your money back in your wallet, and don't even bother to give today. I just saw the elders turn pale back there. But the point of it is, in order to be pleasing from God, it needs to be the first two, not number 3 and 4. And finally, it must be done cheerfully. Now, I know Jeremy would like to see us doing cartwheels down the aisle, right? While we're giving. But that's probably not going to happen. But this idea of giving cheerfully, here's what I think it means. Have you ever given a gift to someone? Maybe it's at Christmas time. This is something that you knew that they really wanted all year long. That's all they talked about. And you're going to be the person that gives it to them. How do you feel when you give them that gift? You're excited, right? You want to give that gift. You're excited about it. You're excited for them to open it, and so you can watch as they are excited to receive it. But now if you're the person that waits till 11 o'clock on December 24th and has to go out and buy a present for Aunt Edith because you know she's getting you something, and you really don't want to do it, but you go out and you do it anyways, that's grudgingly. That's not how we want to give. God loves a cheerful giver. Not likes a cheerful giver, but He loves a cheerful giver. There's a certain difficulty in generosity, and it's difficult to make the transition from my own security to being generous. I know for me at times when finances are short, bills are piling up, money seems scarce, how do I help the needy when it seems like I am the needy? There's a misconception that if I had more, I would do more. And I know Jeremy talked a little bit about this, but someone once said, show me what a man will do with $1, I'll show you what he'll do with $1 million. It's not about how much we have. That's not what generosity is about at all. Generosity, you can write in your outline, has never been a money matter. It's always been, or simply been, a heart matter. It's how we think about what we have. And this can clearly be seen in the story of the widow with the 2 coins. Now picture this. Jesus goes to the temple one day. He takes all His disciples with Him. They line up in the temple. And guess what Jesus is doing? He's watching people as they gave their offering. Interesting. This is our temple, right? We say that Christ is here with us. I wonder if Jesus is watching our hearts and our money as we give it. So anyways, as they watch, here comes old Ezekiel. He comes walking around and he throws $1,000 into the till. And the disciples are like, whoa, that guy is generous. He gave $1,000. Can you believe it? Here comes old Jebediah. He walks around, and he throws $3,000 in. And you can see Peter kind of nudging Judas. Hey, did you see that? $3,000. Oh, Judas saw it all right. But then there comes this little old lady, barely walk, kind of humped over, has a cane. She comes wobbling up there. She opens up her purse. A little bit of dust comes out. You know how that is. She digs around a little bit in the purse. She pulls out 2 little coins, probably pennies, and throws them in. You can kind of hear the disciples beginning to snicker a little bit, right? Did you see that? What a stingy old dame. Gave her 2 cents worth. Surprisingly enough, when Jesus observes this, he turns to them and he says, I tell you, truly, she put in more than the rest. And they're shocked. What do you mean she put in more than the rest? She gave 2 cents. They gave 3,000. They gave 1,000. She put in out of her poverty while they put in out of their abundance. And this is the difference. This is what separates what generosity is really about. We may be putting in a lot into the offering. We may be giving to everybody out there. But we may also be giving out of our abundance. See, at the end of the day, when Ezekiel and Jebediah went home, they still had their 401ks. They still had their nice bank account. They still had a warm home to go to. They still had food on their table. It didn't affect them that much because they gave out of their abundance. Now, the lady that gives the 2 coins, she gave all that she had. It affected her because now she has nothing. You see, what we have to learn is sometimes it takes sacrifice. She gave more than what was expected. Sometimes generosity actually takes sacrifice on our part, and sometimes we don't like that word, do we? In conclusion, I'm going to leave you with this final thought. The parable of the rich fool. Remember this guy? Jeremy talked about him. He's the guy that had so much in abundance that he had to build bigger barns in order to accommodate it all. He had that much. It was overflowing. And the funny part of it is, what he had was an attitude problem. See, his attitude was, eat, drink, and be merry. Because I've got plenty of grain to last me for many years. The thought never occurred to him, maybe give some of it away. Maybe give it to your neighbors. Maybe help someone that's in need. He said, no, I have enough here to last me a lifetime. And guess what? It did. Because the Lord said to him, you fool, tonight your life will be required of you. I want you to listen carefully to the next to the last statement in this parable. It's interesting. He said, you fool, tonight your life will be required of you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? Here's the irony of giving. Whether you give it now and help other people out is your business. But you're going to give it. You're either going to give it now while you're here upon this earth, you're going to be generous towards others, or you're going to give it to somebody else when you die. The story ends with these ominous words, and this is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich towards God. Today, if you're not a Christian, I'd like to go back to John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him would not perish, but would have everlasting life. You have a choice to make today, too. You can make the choice of everlasting life with God, or you can make a choice of eternal damnation with Satan. Jesus said, the one that repents and is baptized will receive the forgiveness of their sins and receive the gift of the Holy Spirit. We hope that would be your choice today. If we can help you this way or any other way, we ask that you come as together we stand and sing the hymn of invitation.